Hello BookTube, this is a continuation of my 2020 library tour. Today, or in this video, part 10 of science fiction and fantasy. Quite a bit more to go. It is my favorite genre though, so yeah. Anyway, let's get started. First up, I have a wuxia novel, The 11th Sun by Gulong. Gulong was one of the 3 tripods of wuxia, and this is about a Xiao, the 11th Sun, who meets a beautiful young heiress to a martial arts tradition, and they fall in love and have many trials to go through before they can be together. And this book is amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it. Next up are the first 3 books in the Khorasan Archive series. The Blood Print, in which Arian of the Companions of Hera is tasked with finding the blood print. The Black Khan, Book 2, is where she has to track the blood print down in Khorasan. What is this? How it's called? I think it's Starfall. No, Ashfall. So at the end of the blood print, the Black Khan has taken the blood print and has moved it to his capital of Ashfall. And once Arian gets out of the bind, she's left in, and at the end of the blood print, she goes down to Ashfall to get it back. In Book 3, The Blue Eye, she goes on a quest to find another copy of the book from which the blood print comes from. Otherwise, the forces of the One-Eyed Preacher will win, and that's going to be an incredibly bad thing because they're an incredibly bad bunch of people. And I'm quite looking forward to rereading the Khorasan Archive series from the beginning, starting in January, which I will talk about next Friday. Next, I have 3 novels by Yoon-Ha Lee, the Machineries of Empire series, or the Hexarchate. This is Nine Fox Gambit, in which Karis, or Carol Karis, a brilliant mathematician, is sidled with the ghost memory of a centuries-old genocidal maniac in order to take down a heresy in a space polity in which exotic sciences and exotic technologies are dependent upon calendrical hegemony. In Book 2, Raven's Stratagem, Karis engineers a splitting of the Hexarchate while fighting off an alien invasion. In Book 3, Revenant Gun, one of the remnants of the old Hexarchate clones the centuries-old genocidal maniac to defeat Karis and what's left of the ghost memory of the other, of the same person. I love the Khorasan Archives, despite a few issues, and I love the Hexarchate series. So, they're both fantastic. If you haven't read them and if you are interested in science fiction and fantasy, do read them. My little synopsis is probably not doing either of them justice. Hopefully I'll be able to read the Hexarchate series at some point in total. I'm not entirely sure when though. Next, or something that's a omnibus from Kenneth Lee, Tales of the Flat Earth, The Lords of Darkness. This omnibus edition includes Night's Master, Death's Master, and Delusion's Master. I quite like Night's Master and Death's Master. I mean, Death's Master is fantastic. Oh, The Magicians by Lev Grossman. This is the first book in the Magicians trilogy that was later adapted into a sci-fi series called The Magicians. It's about Quentin Coldwater, who is, as a high school senior looking to colleges, and he's one day invited to apply to Brakebills, which he discovers is a magical university. And he's accepted and kind of learns magic, and then discovers that this fantasy world from this novel series, basically Narnia, that he loved as a child is real, and he and his friends eventually go to this fantasy world and cause all sorts of chaos. I like the novel, although I wish more time had been spent at Brakebills, that more plots had centered around that rather than Narnia. And next, I have two novels by Nancy Springer, The White Heart and The Golden Swan. Love that color. Love that cover by Rowena. The Golem's Eye, Book 2 of the Bartimaeus Trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. Picked this up free from Golden's Book Exchange, I think last year, because I was, waiting for the bus. Because last year, well, the last time I went to Golden's, I took the bus. Because every other month at Golden's has a half-off sale. And I couldn't get anybody to take me. So I decided to take the bus. And it turned into like an hour and a half tour to actually get there. Because unfortunately there were a lot of people, kind of sort of like my route to get to Golden sort of coincided with a lot of other people's routes. So by the time I actually got to Golden's, the bus to take me home was already waiting for me. And I was like, ugh. So anyway, but luckily they managed to sort of reschedule my departure, so I had about like 30 to 45 minutes to browse around and pick up some books, and also while I was waiting for the bus, went through the free books which they have in a cart outside, and I picked this up because it's rather battered. Oh, this is a great anthology, Swords and Dark Magic, edited by Jonathan Strahan and Lou Anders. About 10 years ago or so, there was a brief resurgence in sword and sorcery, a subgenre of fantasy that focuses on usually barbarian or mercenary individuals who use swords, who typically fight wizards. Basically Conan the Cimmerian. And sword and sorcery, every decade and a half, there'll be like a brief resurgence, a brief intro. There's a continual fandom of sword and sorcery. but new publishing, new stories, new writers who are writing in sword and sorcery. Usually, you'll see about once every decade and a half, there'll be like a flourishing of a lot of new publishing. But and then it'll sort of putter out or sputter out, and it'll be another 10 to 15 years before another brief resurgence happens. And so this, I think, this came out in the middle of the last resurgence, and it is quite good. A lot of really good short stories in here. Yeah, Goats of Glory by Stephen Erickson is really good. The Singing Spear was really good. A Wizard in Wasazen by C.J. Cherry. That is amazing. I love that story. Two Lions, a Witch in the Wardrobe by Kenneth Lee. I remember being really good. It's been a while since I've read this in total. So, yeah. And next we have two novels by Neil Stephenson. Snow Crash, one of the staples of cyberpunk, which is a science fiction genre that deals with technology and sort of the repercussions of technology in the near future. Also typically utilizes hypercapitalism and the breakdown of a society into hyper-capitalist entities. And Snow Crash, I've been interested in reading for a while. And so I picked up this copy that's more than a bit battered. But anyway, I have a bit of a sweet tooth for cyberpunk. Or at least the idea of cyberpunk. And next is one of the originating novels in the steampunk genre, The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer. So steampunk, it comes out of cyberpunk and generally posits some of the tropes, some of the genre conventions of cyberpunk into a Victorian-inspired setting. Either sort of an alternate history where the Victorian period was more advanced than it was, or into secondary worlds in which it's a Victorian-type period, or remnant inspired by period. Next, I have two books by Fritz Leiber, and I want to say they're both doubles of the anthology I showed earlier, The Three Against Death, or The Three of Swords. So this is Swords in the Mist, and Swords Against Death. mass market paperbacks that I picked up from Golden's quite some time ago. And then we have The Star Kings by Edmund Hamilton. Picked that up from the Friends at the Library Booksell Nook. The Time of the Dark by Barbara Hambly. Again, picked up from the Friends at the Library Booksell Nook. And The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. Picked this up, about maybe 10 years ago, maybe a bit more than that, for my birthday one year. It's about a centuries-long conflict between humanity and an alien species that using relativistic space transit times. Basically, the soldiers fighting these wars live for decades, centuries, and so very often these soldiers are people out of time. And so this is about one of these soldiers who has to experience having to readapt to human society that has evolved centuries after his own time. The Road Home by Joel Rosenberg. 2 novels by Jay Lake, or 2 works by Jay Lake. The Sky That Reps by Jay Lake. This is a short story collection by one of the big proponents of steampunk and the new weird, who died, quite a few years ago. And I quite liked his work. This is The Trial of Flowers. Ex-library book that came from Hamilton Public Library. And then we have We Are the Dead by Mike Shackle. Love that cover. And finally, for this section, Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. This is the first book in the Books of Amba series. I want to say there's at least another book, if not 2. Although I think next year she's going to be starting a new series, whether set in the same world or a different one, I don't know. But in this setting, there are people with special powers who are forced into this sort of monastic lifestyle to sort of keep the gods under control. And the main character, Mare, is forced into this situation. She's incredibly powerful, and eventually she does rebel successfully and change the world, but until then she's pretty much stuck in this sort of monastery type thing. Anyway, I didn't particularly care for it. I might come back to it eventually, but I don't remember the novel all that fondly. But we shall see. I mean, oftentimes I'm sometimes harsher on a first reading than I am on a second reading, and sometimes I'm infinitely harsher on further readings than I was the first time. It's just how I read, I guess. Anyway, BookTube, that wraps up part 10 of Science Fiction and Fantasy. I will be back Monday with parts 11 and 12. Yeah, 11 and 12. And then we should be wrapping up by Wednesday. I mean, not Wednesday, Thursday. So anyway, BookTube, I will see you in a few hours with weekly reads. So until then, thank you, have a great afternoon, and please stay safe.